Road safety remains a pressing concern with over 12,000 road deaths last year. The Retail Motor Industry Organisation stands at the forefront of efforts to enhance safety on South Africa's roads. The RMI is promoting initiatives aimed at reducing road fatalities and ensuring safer driving practices. Ipeleng Mabusela, CEO of Strategy and Corporate Support, joins us now just to discuss this further. Thank you so much, Ipeleng, for your time. Good to have you with us this evening here on Newsnight. I think maybe first and foremost, you can just maybe talk about road safety as it remains a major concern in South Africa, of course, and maybe just give us a snapshot of the current road safety landscape in the country.
Evening, Baron, and thank you to you and all your listeners. I think critical is South Africa is one of the countries that are struggling with road safety on a global level. We've seen that road fatalities and crashes cost us in the region of 142 billion, 3.3% of GDP. In terms of the number of accidents, to the point you've made, we've had over 11,800 fatalities in the past year, 2023, and this first quarter not improving. Road crashes in the region of 10,000 per annum. That's an increase from 2022 as well. And some of the contributors for road fatalities, really, there's three of them. The main one being essentially the human factors that affect road traffic accidents. If we think about some of the human factors, it's the way we drive, it's some of the behaviors that we conduct, drinking and driving, are we braking too late and so forth. Second factor is vehicle factors, which is the one that we want to focus on as the RMI. Other ways that we can reduce the adverse conditions of vehicles, whether it's brakes or other mechanical factors. And the third one is environmental factors, challenges with the condition of the roads, potholes, the way that lanes are marked, challenges with traffic signs and so forth. So those are really the conditions that we were dealing with in South Africa. And I think there's an opportunity to see how we can improve that.
Ipeleng, when it comes to roadworthiness of vehicles, vehicle testing maybe as well, I think it's something you've previously mentioned in another interview we've had as well. Where are we falling short as a country when it comes to this?
So great question, Baron. I think there was a regulation promulgated in around 2014, Regulation 138, which said that essentially for all vehicles that are 10 years and older, that we would do periodic testing every 2 years. That legislation is in place for taxis and trucks, that's every year, and for buses every 6 months. But for passenger vehicles that you and I drive, there isn't anything in place at the moment to try to do that. The only time that our vehicles get tested is essentially when you and I buy a new vehicle. It goes through a standard roadworthy test, and there's an opportunity to that added regulation that's in place to actually put that in place through getting a date confirmed by the Minister of Transport, that's Barbara Creecy. We think that with the new GNU in place, we've understood they're more flexible, open-minded. I think between a partnership between the private and public sector, we can find ways to get that in place to see how we can improve the number of tests that are done on vehicles and therefore reduce some of the road deaths and stats in South Africa.
Well, the NRSS, the National Road Safety Strategy, aims to cut road fatalities by 50%, if I'm not mistaken, this by 2030. What role is RMI playing to support this?
Absolutely, yeah, that's something that's in place, and it's not only in South Africa, but it's also on a global level to see how we can reduce fatalities by 50%. From an RMI perspective, really, there's three requests or things that we want to do. The first one is we want to collaborate with government. We've reached out to the Minister of Transport as well as to the Road Traffic Management Corporation for a couple of things. The first one is let's partner, let's collaborate. We've seen how private-public partnerships can improve the conditions in our country through various aspects of government. The second aspect is how do we work together to get this policy to be in place now for the first time, where you and I, our passenger vehicles, can get tested at a more frequent basis. And the third one is how do we go about working with government to extract certain data, which you've requested. That data essentially is, as done on a global level, how do we go about testing essentially what happens when you get improved vehicle testing to see how that correlates with improvement in essentially the amount of accidents that we have. I think it's critical that we get this kind of data, be transparent about it, work together with government to see how we can improve the situation. And from an RMI perspective, we look after essentially the entire retail automotive aftermarket, which is 2% of GDP, 300,000 jobs, 8,500 businesses. And I think we are well positioned to do the work with academia and government to see how we can begin to solve this road safety challenge.
Ipoleng, the reality in South Africa is also that many South Africans, of course, due to economic constraints, they drive old vehicles, poorly maintained vehicles as well. And of course, sometimes they can't help it, as I said, due to economic constraints. What practical measures then, if I can, maybe ask you this question, can be taken to address this issue without, of course, burdening motorists further?
Absolutely. I mean, you're quite right. Our socio-economic environment is extremely challenging. We know what we've come out of from an economic point of view. So really, there's a couple of things. One, there are 13 million vehicles within South Africa's car park. That's all the vehicles that are registered and are on our roads. And the policy that's in place is requesting that only vehicles that are 10 years and older, which is essentially, interestingly enough, the average age of a vehicle in South Africa, that gets tested on a 2-year basis. The average cost of the test is around 600 Rand, not expensive, but we can find ways to the 142 billion that I mentioned that we spend on road fatalities and crashes. Instead of using that reactively, how do we begin to use that proactively to reduce road deaths and to reduce the cost of vehicle testing? Another aspect is, of course, we know the holiday season is coming up. The RMI has 8,500 businesses across the country. We need to get all the testing done on your vehicle, tires, all of that, lights and so forth, get your vehicle services in. Our members do provide, the public that peace of mind that if you do use any of our accredited members, that you will have peace of mind with the way your vehicle has been dealt with. And if we have challenges, there is recourse by engaging, of course, the RMIs through his websites and so forth. And I think another important aspect is we as communities and users need to be more responsible just in our behavior. When we see roadblocks, when we see government doing its best to change behavior, we need to also play the ball as well.
Yeah, of course, there will be a lot of talks with the Minister of Transport, of course, directly between you, her office, and you as well. You mentioned the festive season, of course, coming up, which means the possibility of road accidents. It will be high, possibly this festive season as well, like it is every year. Safety on the road is always a big issue when it comes to the festive season. I'm thinking here, when we mention vehicle testing, is it maybe time to reintroduce or to introduce mandatory periodic vehicle testing? Do you think that is something that should be done when we talk about vehicle testing?
Absolutely, yeah. It's been something that's been on the cards since 2014. The law has been, around, but it hasn't yet been implemented. The minister is really the only person who's got the power to implement that. To your point earlier, there will be some sort of socioeconomic impact. But today already, taxis get tested every year, as well as trucks. Buses get tested every 6 months. So, that's to essentially only 20% of the vehicles in South Africa go through some sort of periodic testing, and there is certainly room to improve that. The likes of Nigeria gets all their vehicles tested at a minimum on an annual basis. Developed countries, of course, have similar frequency, if not better. And we do have global stats that show that that does improve road safety within countries across the world.
Thank you so much for your time this evening, Ipoleng. Of course, Mabusela, CEO, Strategy and Corporate Support for the Retail Motor Industry Organization. Thank you so much, Ipoleng, for your time this evening and your insights. Road safety, of course, being in the spotlight yet again, as it is the festive season coming up. Still to come here on